Hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stella and I'm an intern with ASEAN Foundation. It is my pleasure to be the MC for the Connect ASEAN Creative Futures Dialogue today. Connect ASEAN is the ASEAN Foundation's core arts and cultural program, supported by the Republic of Korea. The Connect ASEAN Creative Futures Dialogue is organized as a response to the new reality of COVID-19 pandemic facing artists and creatives. We believe that artists and arts professionals can play a key role in rebuilding the world post-pandemic. And ladies and gentlemen, what wonderful videos we've just watched. From the first, there is an action-packed plot, riveting background music, and beautiful characters. By this, of course, I mean their visuals, or the intricate design of the puppets. How many of you have seen Wayang Kulit? That was such a joy to watch, not to mention the certain memories it brought back of that great universe where the Force rules. And what about that graphic recording teaser? It gave us all a sneak peek at our panelists for today. I wonder what we have in store for you all. Now, while waiting for more people to log in, we will have a quick game. Please log on to www.menti.com and enter the code that will be shown soon. Here we go. The code is 3546822. That's 3546822. I'll give you all about 10 seconds to log in and then we'll begin. Just to know, the game still consists of 4 questions about ASEAN and the Republic of Korea in general. You have 10 seconds to answer each question, and the faster you answer, the more points you get. All right, I think it's time, and let's have a look at the first question. Ooh. So many of us know the Korean traditional dress is the hanbok, and I can see all of your emotions and reactions. Now, what about this first question? Yes, the traditional dress for the ASEAN member states. So do remember that you're looking for the correct combination between the traditional dress and the country. So for example, Vietnam, Altai, make sure it's the correct connection, then only you choose. Ooh, I see we have about 21 responses. They're growing. Well, a lot of us seem to know that the kebaya, or seem to think that the kebaya is Indonesia's traditional dress. Ooh, not too many votes for Singapore and Longi here. Do you guys know what the correct answer is? I'll wait for about 5 more responses, and once you reach 50, and let's have a look at which of you or how many people got this correct. All right, and now we'll reveal the answer. Here we go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's the first 3 that are correct. That means a lot of you do know your traditional dress. So it's Vietnam and the Altai, Thailand and Chutai, and Indonesia and Kebaya. For your information, Barat Saya is Philippines' traditional dress, the sarong is more commonly known as Cambodia's traditional dress, and Longi is actually Myanmar's traditional dress. So the next question, let's see. How many of us can get this correct? Do remember that you only have 10 seconds. So where does ASEAN rank in terms of Republic of Korea's trading partners? So is it first? Are we number 1 with them? Or maybe in the top 10? Or maybe something like 14? All right, time's nearly up. And wow, a lot of us think we're top 10, but no, we're actually second. Yes, we are quite influential in terms of trading. So moving on to the next question. Now, this one should be a favorite with all of you. International reception of Korean dramas can be traced back to around 2002 and 2003 in the Asian Pacific region. So how many do you know, or can you guess, which dramas are considered the beginning of the K-wave in the ASEAN region? Now, do remember, it's the beginning of the K-wave. So, yep, make your choices. I see Winter Sonata is climbing up the ranks, so is Autumn in My Heart. Ooh, we're getting there slowly. I'll give you guys about 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. And the answer is actually Winter Sonata and Autumn in My Heart. I don't know why a lot of you voted for Boys Over Flowers, but that came out in 2009. And fun fact, Winter Sonata is actually the first K-drama to be subbed in Cambodia. Yeah, that's right. Moving on to the last question. So, what language from the ASEAN region do you think has been used the most for subtitles in K entertainment? Now that's including your reality TV shows like Running Man, etc., and of course your favorite dramas. Wow, it's a lot of you have answered. Indonesian. Well, just for everyone's information, this has no professional proof, but was compiled based on my own K-drama history, where I opened up each wiki page to check which one had the right subtitles. And yes, many of them had Indonesian and Mandarin subtitles. So, hope you all had fun, and let's have a look at who managed to earn the most points during this quick 4-question Menti game. Wow, it seems like Shami was the fastest and had the most correct points. So congratulations. And thank you everyone for participating in our Menti games. So this is it for our Menti games, and hope everyone had fun learning about ASEAN and Republic of Korea arts and culture. Now, before we officially start this webinar, and to ensure everyone has a good experience, there are a few house rules that I would like to share with you. As you can see on screen, please rename yourselves in the Zoom application according to your affiliation and name. For example, ASEAN Foundation and Stella. Please write your questions in the questions and answers box. Click Q&A in the webinar controls to launch it. You can upvote a question in the Q&A, but you cannot comment. As this webinar is chat-based, your microphones are automatically muted and your videos are turned off. And for those of you who want the certificate and panelists' PowerPoints, these will be announced at the very end of this webinar, so do make sure that you stay with us for the entire event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin the second webinar of Connect ASEAN Creative Futures Dialogue. We are pleased to have His Excellency Ambassador Lim Song Nam, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to ASEAN, to deliver the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency to the screen.
Good afternoon. I'm honored and pleased to welcome all of you to this timely webinar on post-pandemic pathways for the arts and cultural sector, organized as part of Connect ASEAN program by the ASEAN Foundation. As the Korean ambassador to ASEAN, I'd like to begin by emphasizing that cultural partnership has always been an important component in the ties of friendship and cooperation between ASEAN and Korea. Let me give you a few examples. When the ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit was held in Busan last November, ASEAN-Korea Culture Innovation Summit was one of the most significant and successful side events, which provided the useful platform for sharing best practices and visions to promote cultural cooperation. Furthermore, President Moon Jae-in and 10 ASEAN leaders agreed to establish a people-centered community of ASEAN and Korea by invigorating cultural conversation, people-to-people exchanges, and cultural bonds. Connect ASEAN, worth $1.9 million, is also a follow-up project of the Busan Commemorative Summit, which will bring together promising artists across 10 ASEAN member states and Korea for creative collaborations from 2020 to 2022. Like many joint ASEAN-Korea projects supported by the ASEAN-Korea Cooperation Fund, Connect ASEAN has also encountered an unexpected hurdle, which is COVID-19. Under these new circumstances, the ASEAN Foundation has been ingenuitive in overcoming new challenges, as evidenced by this Creative Futures Dialogue. While the COVID-19 has profoundly impacted arts and cultural sectors, I believe it is extremely meaningful to engage in discussions on how artists and creatives can contribute to rebuilding the local and global communities isolated by lockdowns, as well as healing broken bonds among human beings. Today's webinar in particular will focus on how arts and culture can make a positive social impact in the post-pandemic world. I believe that this platform will provide every participant with an opportunity to think out of the box in order to be more productive in that regard. While I look forward to being enlightened by presentations and discussions this afternoon, I also hope that various Connect ASEAN programs can be held face-to-face sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Lim Song Nam, for the wonderful message. We will now start our main event, the presentation by our panelists that will be moderated by Mr. Ben Ham, the Project Director of Connect ASEAN. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ben to the screen.
Thank you, Stella, and thank you to all of those across the ASEAN region and beyond for joining us today for the webinar. As we have all taken pause during the pandemic, now is the time for us to assess the world we have created and make changes that we demand for a better future. An increase in digital consumption of arts and culture has shifted our focus from art as an object or production to art as a way of life, with an emphasis on ideas, values, knowledge, and wisdom. In this moment, the transformative power of the arts has a great potential to take the lead in imagining new ways of organizing and structuring a more caring and just society for all. The Connect ASEAN Arts and Cultural Programme is committed to community arts practices, a major component of our planning since day one. Today, we are joined by 3 arts and creative sector professionals who have, through their work and practice, collaborated across sectors and communities to enact meaningful change. The scope of work there is to be done throughout ASEAN nations is enormous, and our speakers have shown leadership in 3 areas, namely economic empowerment, traditional arts and crafts, and digital literacy. Today's webinar will consist of 3 10-minute presentations by our speakers, followed by approximately 40 minutes of question time. Now, it is my very great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Melinda Martinez, lead researcher, socio-cultural at the ASEAN Studies Centre, ISIS, Yusof Ishak Institute, Singapore. Before joining the Institute, she was a program manager at Kota Kita Foundation, a non-profit based in Indonesia with expertise in urban planning and citizen participation in the design and development of cities. Please join me in welcoming Melinda to the screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Okay, I will put my presentation now. Okay. Yeah, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Yang Mi-ing and Benjamin and colleagues at the ASEAN Foundation for inviting me. It is my pleasure to be in the same panel with Jennifer and Tintoy, 2 talented and creative minds in our region. I think before we advance a dialogue on art practices today, allow me to share some thoughts and ideas to reimagining ASEAN creative industries amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So for those of us who are artists or creative workers, The term of creative industry might not be strange anymore. UNTAC defines the art and creative industry as knowledge-based economic activities that embrace economy, cultural, and social aspects. And when I'm thinking about the creative industry, I always imagine products with this kind of characteristics: high value creation, multiplier effect, cultural element, and business opportunities. I always imagine something like Hallyu movement or the Korean wave as a perfect example of creative product. As we know that in the 1980s, the Korean government revoked the film censorship law and started to allow filmmakers to express their artistic freedom. And following after that, more cultural institutions were built to support artists during that period. Today, we see everything from Korean dramas on Netflix, K-pop concerts on YouTube, and Korean skincare that dominate the cosmetic industry. I think the Korean wave is an exemplary process of building a creative movement and identity for development. And there are some subsectors under the term creative industries that include some products such as design, music, fashion, literature, and performing arts, and many more. And why the creative industry is important for us in the ASEAN region. We are a rapidly growing region. If ASEAN were a country, we would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Our economies depend so much on trade, manufacturing, tourism, which need a lot of creative and artistic inputs. And many countries in ASEAN have considered the creative industry as an important economic sector in their countries. For example, in Indonesia, Backcraft plays an important role. Backcraft claims that the Indonesian creative industry contributes to around 7.4% to the country's GDP. And according to Singapore Economic Development Board, the creative industry helps the country to boost its global competitiveness. For instance, EY ranks Singapore as the first in Asia for attracting a diverse base of global talent. And if we talk about the creative industry, we should not only see it from the commercial side. For us in the ASEAN region, the creative industry can help to accelerate the SDGs, such as women empowerment, youth innovation, and poverty reduction. Because many creative enterprises usually employ a lot of freelancers and micro, small, and medium enterprises. And we should not ignore as well that the creative industry generates positive social impacts such as health and well-being, inclusion, and urban regeneration. So it brings to my main point here. A lot of stakeholders have understood that it's vital. The creative industry is a vital sector for ASEAN economic growth. And a lot of countries have started to explore policies to strengthen this relatively young economic sector. But COVID has kind of halted the progress that ASEAN has made. A lot of creative workers, such as performing artists and freelancers, depend so much on the tourism sector, which is struggling the most during this pandemic. But the pandemic gave us an opportunity to kind of rethink to how to improve our creative industry better. So this can provide an opportunity to mobilize and improve supporting mechanisms for our creative workers. So there are 3 or 4 opportunities we can explore, in my opinion. I think building a stronger policy setup, establishing new platforms, nurturing community and ecosystem of creative workers, and exploring global partnerships are important. First, I think in the policy sector, ASEAN can start by mapping a comprehensive landscape of ASEAN's creative industries. A lot of government agencies across ASEAN had been established, such as Backcraft in Indonesia, Malaysia Design Development Center, and Thailand Creative and Design Center. And moving forward, this agency can start to set up an initiative to explore market or filling the expertise gaps regionally. And second, COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of technology adoption and digital presence. We've seen marketplaces and information platforms are mushrooming during the pandemic, assisting the creative industry to climb the value chain by using technology as an enabler is important. Third, civil society organizations across ASEAN member states can help to assist ASEAN's creative industries to nurture community and ecosystem to exchange information and improve their capacity. Fourth, ASEAN can set up a platform to nurture global partnership. In the future, a lot of creative innovation will come from a collaborative project between countries. So it can be collaboration that search for innovative and creative approach to combat climate change. We should nurture this kind of community that embraces this kind of exploration. Okay, I would like to end my presentation here by briefly summarize these 3 points. First, creative industry is a vital sector for the ASEAN community, and COVID has brought unprecedented challenges to creative workers, so it kind of pushing us forward to rethink about the future of creative industry. And ASEAN can initiate a lot of meaningful actions by strengthening policy setup, building digital platforms, nurturing the ecosystem of creative communities, and facilitating global partnership. So thank you very much. That's all from me. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Melinda. There's so much in your presentation for our participants to think about. And remember, we have about 200 participants at the moment. So if you do have questions, please press the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and remember to type your name and country followed by your question. Now, let's continue to our next speaker, Tin Toi Chuo, co-founder of Fusion Wayang Kulit in Malaysia. Now, Fusion Wayang Kulit aims to revive the traditional art of Wayang Kulit by merging it with pop culture, creating an intergenerational bridge. For those of you who joined us a little earlier, you may have gotten a chance to see Peperangan Bintang, a Star Wars-inspired traditional puppet performance, and, I am told, with official permission from Disney to perform. So please, join me in welcoming to the screen, Tin Toi Chuo.
Hi, good afternoon. So let me share my screen first and then start. Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank ASEAN Foundation and Ben for having me here. This is such an interesting and energetic event, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Okay, a little bit about us. Fusion Wayang Kulit is a team that established back in 2012, where we actually, like Ben said, trying to change things and try to make so-called do something for this fading art. And we do it by actually merging with something with science fiction stuff as well as multimedia. So it was found by actually myself, Tin Toi, and a good friend of mine, Teck Huat, and we actually do this closely with my master puppeteer, Muhammad Taim, and he is the master puppeteer from Malaysia, and I work with him closely in all the projects. And this is our team, that we have musician, craftsman, and scriptwriter, a full proper team to actually do this. And in a little bit of wayang kulit, if you may, I mean, there are many wayang kulit, so-called shadow puppet around the world, from Turkey, Greek, and even China. So what we are doing is definitely Malaysian style. And then there's a lot of, many times we've been asked about the, confused about the style. So here's the clear picture of like the Malaysian style is done this way. Usually inner arm will be holding tools, and the puppet color is visible during performance, like this. So this is the audience view, because we use art line and marker to paint our puppet, and those material are translucent, so the light actually go through, so color is actually can be seen. So we started this project back in 2012 when we are invited to participate in an art exhibition in Kuala Lumpur. So at that time I was thinking, maybe, well, I should do something about culture. I haven't done this much. So these are the culture that we have in my country. So I can't do lion dance, you know, I'm not into this flower woodcraft. And I find that wayang kulit is something suitable for me because I'm a character designer. So each of the puppet is a character. So it's easier for me to relate to. And we find out it's a fading art. It's quite sad. So I was thinking, what can we do to help this? So I actually learned something very important from a CEO of this international fruit company, and he asked us to think different. So I actually use his philosophy in many of my work, and not different with this, I do apply for this project as well. So basically, what if I combine two totally different elements into one, and to try to get something which is very unique. And this is one example, like Nightmare Before Christmas is one of the very, very good one under this concept, and it was so unique. So for us, we take wayang kulit and add something which I love, which is Star Wars, and we got this Peperangan Bintang. In English, basically it means War of the Star. And allow me to bring you to the puppet design. So we have the Darth Vader, which is the bad guy, and we have Maharaja Ravana, the bad guy. So it combined, he got the worst of both worlds, and we call him Sangkala Vede, a very powerful general by the name of Vede. And then we put in a lot of thoughts into the design. The original helmet is too mechanical, so we add in some evil eyes, long teeth to make him more organic. Therefore, hopefully that it looks more traditional. So the good guy, Luke Skywalker, and then we mix it, combine with Sirama, and then we got Perantau Langit. It means someone who walk in the sky. And then we actually get the feather element on the leg of the main character and apply to our Luke Skywalker, because if the character has feather on the leg, maybe he can walk in the sky. So that's how we got it. So some other character like Stormtrooper, you know, Kylo Ren, and the latest Mandalorian. But we don't only do just Star Wars. We want to show that we are versatile. So we're doing a lot of other type of pop culture icon as well. Like for this, like DC superheroes and the Japanese Macross, one of my favorite. And in US, we call it Robotech. And this puppet actually is transformable. So if you may, I'll show you the video. So it's from the robot, and then we pull a string. So you actually transform to the plane. So that was done by a co-founder, Teck Huat. I'm crazy, he's crazier. Anyway, so we continue doing it to get into a lot of different categories, like this one, seasonal greetings, like Christmas. And then we actually make a puppet for Ed Sheeran to promote his music video in Malaysia. And when he was here last year, we actually give him the puppet. And then Same thing, and some of the another science fiction pop culture like Predator, we actually created this and to actually do performance in conjunction of the promotion of the movie. And then same here, Bruce Lee was invited to do something about the 75th anniversary of Bruce Lee. So we actually did this to celebrate. And we are very fortunate to be actually invited to perform in a couple of countries like Germany, Thailand, Singapore, and Austria. So the conclusion, our main objective is trying to save this shadow puppet fading art, if you may, by fusioning it with contemporary element. This is just my way, and there are so many other art which are fading, and we all should actually try to do something to save this art before it's too late. You know, when it's gone, then that is gone forever. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tin Toy, and for the very important message that you have left us with. And I'm looking forward to seeing myself being turned into a wayang kulit puppet very soon.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting.
Thanks, Tin Toy. So, okay, it's time for our very last speaker, Jennifer Katanyutanant, an artist and creative director who uses immersive digital experiences to build creative communities. Her past work has explored ecological manifestations of the YouTube recommendation algorithm, impacts of a tech-mediated lifestyle, and the use of food and game mechanics to create new interactions. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer to the screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the ASEAN Foundation for giving us all this opportunity to present, and thank you so much to my fellow panelists. I've learned so much from you all. I have a ton of questions that I'll ask you later. Anyway, yeah, my name is Jen. I am a new media artist based in Bangkok, and I'm really excited to share my All Visions workshop with you all today. This is a workshop where I partnered with a local grade school in Bangkok to brainstorm different ways we could use emerging technologies like AI, 3D printing, and AR to redesign the neighborhood. So I'll be sharing some of the innovative ideas the students came up with, along with what I learned as a practitioner and some things that I do differently. And I hope to use it as a jumping off point to learn from all of you as well. And next slide, please. I am Thai American with a background in journalism and cognitive science, and I started off working in journalism and communications, and then used storytelling with technology to create interactive VR, AR, and physical installations. Along the way, I developed a platform called Made in Asia that was for creators in China and Southeast Asia to debut their VR, AR, and experimental art pieces in Los Angeles. And I wanted to do this to widen distribution channels and to fight the unfair perception that Asian countries only copycat and aren't producing really amazing original work, as you just saw in the last presentation. And so, thank you. So along the way, my collaborators and I also developed different workshops around different aspects of technology. For example, we did a 360 video exploration day with a Bangkok-based vocational training program, Steps of Tira, 360 filmmaking workshop for Goethe Institute, and a digital literacy workshop in Lashio, northern Myanmar. At the time, Black mailers were photoshopping Facebook profile pictures of young women onto naked bodies and threatening to send them to their families. And so we worked with a local human rights school in Lashio to develop a workshop that shared some Facebook security settings to keep women safe online. And throughout it all, next slide, please. To my collaborators on how we came to creative technology and the seeds that were planted in their youths, and they talked a lot about how a lot of what they do is self-taught, and the ones who did have an education in computer science mentioned that their education was applied to more business or academic focuses and not necessarily creative. And also the way that they learned was very memorization based and very individual, and it kind of struck me because I feel like with the pandemic, with so much going on with the world, I think we're at a point in history where we really have no idea what is coming up next. And AI technology, used with biotechnology is going to change the way we look at our own bodies. 3D printing will change manufacturing, and AR is drastically changing information and learning. And so it seems like we need a lot of creative thought around technical applications to build what comes next. Next slide, please. So that started getting me thinking about the kids in Bangkok, and how Bangkok is a very dynamic city, and where the culture, the society, the environment is changing rapidly. And so I started thinking about how kids think about the future of their own neighborhoods amidst all this constant change. And I wanted to create a workshop that provided a more tangible sense for what creative technology is and what it's capable of. Next slide, please. I worked with some teachers from a local school in Nang Nang. And back in the day, Nang Nang used to be the Center for Culture and Dance. And together we developed this workshop around introducing emerging technologies and its applications around the world, then developing exercises that invited students to use their imaginations to redesign their neighborhood. And so, another kind of cursory goal I wanted to do was to provide a community of creative technologists so that kids who were interested in this field and wanted to delve more could ask a group of people about, scholarships or college programs or, different ways to self-learn, so they could have a social group to kind of, ask any questions they'd like. Next slide, please. So this workshop started off with a half-day kind of emerging tech intensive where we had references to Marvel movies that highlighted what AI, 3D printing, and AR is. And, so references to Marvel movies as well as references from their own phones. For example, we had a segment where the kids were talking to Siri to highlight, that this is a kind of AI, this is natural language processing. And the kids themselves then connected that idea to the telecom system in their school and started thinking about different ways that telecom might become their teacher in the future. At one point, we also played with AR filters on the phones, and then the kids also took that idea and imagined a classroom where all the walls are, where you can draw on all the walls, sort of like a Minority Report situation. So after that, we went next door to Bangkok 1899, which is a community center. And so they split up into groups to imagine concepts for what the community center 50 years from now will look like. And how emerging tech could help them get there. And so, they brainstormed what kind of artifacts they want to see around the house, drew them on note cards, and then place them around the house. Next slide. Here are a couple more pictures from the workshop. This is Sue. She's a very talented VR artist in Thailand. And this is Bangkok 1899. It was actually the first house in Thailand to have electricity. So it seemed kind of apt for the theme of the workshop. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. In the end, we wanted to create AR visualizations using Spark AR to help to bring these ideas to life. And the visualizations, the 3D models that you see now were made by Sue. This is more to show what these visualizations would look like on location. But some of the ideas that the kids came up with are, an X-ray necklace, and so you put on a necklace and your body becomes an X-ray. Fighting robots, gaming station for sports players, and as well as like a Doraemon that you can ride instead of driving a car, which I would be very into. And so, the idea was to put all of these in Spark AR, which comes within every Facebook app. So these kids could start to see something that started from a workshop happen or visualize them in a real space. Next slide. So the focus of the workshop was to have fun, was to show these kids that, there's so much that you can do with creative technology if you choose to. And, I think that in that respect, the workshop was a success, but I do think that, I had a very clear idea based on what I would want as a kid and not what these particular kids would want. And I think if I were to do this workshop again, I would spend more time just hanging out with the kids, building these very important casual relationships, and become a community steward first. And, and through this process, I learned that it's so important to be open to whatever happens instead of running towards this very neatly defined end goal, because, in the end, it's not really about that. It's really about letting the kids teach me so we can come up with something together. Next slide, please. So yeah, again, applications for the new normal. I think that working in, with any community, with anyone really, requires building relationships, requires deep listening, requires a very participatory approach and commitment to a neighborhood. And I think it's very important. I still think it's very important to have more diversity of thought in technology, because if we think about a lot of the tools that we use today, Facebook, Google, all of the big engines, they're made by a very narrow subset of users. And, right now we're dealing with the ramifications of that, with a lot of disinformation campaigns, with surveillance capitalism structures being set up. And I think with 1 billion more people coming online in the next decade, we need minds from all walks of life to design how we're going to act, play, collaborate, cooperate digitally. And I don't want to be so tech solutionist. I don't think that tech is the answer to all our problems, but I do think that it is one important facet and pathway that we can't ignore anymore, especially after the pandemic. And so, my hope with this workshop is to show these kids that, if they choose to, they can be the ones building the next iteration of what's next for all of us. And with that, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. If anyone has any, next slide, please. Comments, or if you just want to chat or have a virtual coffee, I'm always up for that. And so, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your generosity and sharing your projects with us. Now now before we go on to question time, we've arranged a special treat for everyone. Now we've got an animated summary of our presentations that has been prepared by Mr. Aga Nugraha Muharam from Mudi Baja. So let's go to the animation, and please enjoy. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mas Aga, for your creative contribution to the webinar. All right, speakers, it's time for some questions. And our first question is from Bobby Adam in Indonesia. And his question is, COVID-19 has stoked tensions within society, not just in ASEAN, but across the globe. How can art be a means to overcome racial and cultural discrimination? And we'll go in the same order as the speakers presented. So over to you, Melinda.
Thanks, Ben. It's a very difficult question, I would say. But I think, yeah, a lot of artists have explored art as a means of communication, political action. I think one opportunity to be explored is exploring art as a tool to combat misinformation or hoax in our region, because it's a very important issue now. I think artists can contribute to build a platform which provides accountable information. I think, yeah, especially those issues on racism, radicalism, I think artists can contribute in that part.
Excellent point. Thank you, Melinda. Over to you, Tintoy.
Thank you. Yeah, I just like Melinda said, it's a very tough question actually. The way I look at it is what artists can contribute. The thing is, whatever that I feel that are been done in the social media, especially now, is quite toxic. When they are memes and they are so toxic, and there are things that is actually quite hurting. I feel there are two things we can do. Number one is we can help to create something which is nice and spread it on the website, rather than, there are so many bad things happen. We can't stop it, but we can do the other opposite way by sending nice stuff or good stuff, because we are designer, we can create nice or suitable graphic. A second thing is, I see that the pandemic, a lot of people, stay home and such. There are a lot of artists, musicians, creative or designer or artists, they conducted class. So there are people who are so busy outside who don't really sit down and do music or art. They do music and art during this time. So it become a form of relief or for them to actually, hey, look at art in a different way. So I feel that in this way, people start to value art in a different manner. And I think that we can, with that, people can sense the importance of art.
Yes, thank you, Tintoy. Thank you. I think, and also that would lead on to people becoming more empathetic and more connected through their artistic practice and to their to their fellow humans, right?
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah. And Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree with everything you all have said. It is a very toxic space to be online right now, and I think art can be a pathway towards, for people becoming practitioners themselves. I also think that art has, in terms of highlighting the racial, all the differences and the polarization between people, I think that there's a lot that art can do there. I think that art really strips down what all of these different conflicts really mean, and how it can be, how it's sourced from a very human feeling of fear, a very human feeling of just not knowing what's going to happen next and reacting from fear. And I think that in terms of, overcoming that, I think that is the job of a lot of different people, everyone really. I think art becomes the nexus point for awareness, for, highlighting the commonalities and the differences that then become the commonalities between all people, regardless of race, regardless of nationality. I think that, it really is the job of every single human person to overcome all of these things. And, everyone in this presentation right now, has a responsibility and a duty towards overcoming that. And I think art becomes a part of highlighting, highlighting the commonalities and highlighting who we are as human first.
Yeah, absolutely, Jennifer. I think that responsibility word is really important for us and for everyone who's listening today. Thank you. Okay, let's go on to our second question. This is from Paul Taganas Mendez from the Philippines. So the question is, the pandemic has been a great strain on mental health due to isolation and uncertainty. What can the arts and cultural sector do to make sure future generations understand what it was like to live through these times? And we'll go in the same order again.
Yeah, Ben, I think everyone is facing a difficult situation now, especially I see the Generation Z, because they're in the process of adulthood, but at the same time, they're facing uncertainties. I think it's a very, very tough situation for them. But I still have some hopes from the art and cultural sector, because I think the mentorship spirit in the art and cultural sector is very strong there compared to other sector, I would say. So I think that spirit of mentorship, the community nurturing dialogues should be embraced further. Yeah, it's kind of nice, you know, to go back to that mentorship spirit in this very hard situation.
Thank you, Melinda. Tin Toy?
Well, actually, I still don't have the actual answer for this, because it's really a tough question. But what I can do is, let's say, if I have to do this, I also say that it is hard, especially in this pandemic. A lot of people suffering in all areas. So are the culture and the artists. What I think of is, I have to be strong to hold on to what I am doing. Before pandemic, we can try to do more to help other people or whatever, you know, but at this point of time, not that we can't, but I mean, not that we don't want to, but we can't because of this pandemic. I can't go out, you know, or I can't, many things cannot do. I think the most important is foundationally, I need to stay strong and continue to do what I am doing. As long as I can maintain and survive this pandemic, I am one thing of many to be so-called that been carry on. So I think at this point is I have to keep doing or what I'm doing like nicely, and hopefully I won't stop. I think that will be my take on this.
Thank you, Tin Toy. And Jennifer?
I really agree with what Tin Toy said, actually. When I think back to the beginning of the pandemic, you know, with everything in disarray, like people losing jobs, like no one knowing what's going on, people were holding inside their houses, and, you know, arts and culture became a release for a lot of people. You know, there were a lot of more people watching operas online or watching TV shows, like listening to music, like taking up bread making. Those are all forms of art. And it seemed like such a weird disconnect for art to seem so important in the pandemic, yet be, you know, on a wider scale, be kind of, you know, the power taken away a little bit. For example, I saw in Singapore that, you know, art was classified as a non-essential task or non-essential job, but it seems even more essential at this point in time. And so, you know, with that kind of responsibility, I think that, you know, one, it's difficult to be an artist nowadays. It always has been, and now even more so. And on top of that, there is also this added responsibility of not having to, but just wanting to preserve this large shift in culture that we're going through right now, because this is so completely unique, and it's not the last time. Like, this is going to happen again. So, you know, how artists are going to do that, I definitely agree with Tin Toy in, you know, just keep on keeping on. That's how we're going to do.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for your responses. Now, let's go on to another question. This one is from Gray Yeo from Malaysia. Now, this is actually directed at Tintoy, but I think I'll slightly edit this so that everyone can have a response. So his original question is in relation to Tintoy, and that has he seen a revival of wayang kulit in Malaysia because of his projects? And the second part of the question is he working with researchers or organizations to track the popularity? So this is actually a question of evaluation and tracking. So I think we could actually ask all three of you about this, about the effect of the projects that you've worked on in the past, and if you've been able to see, evaluate and see some kind of improvement as such after the project. So Melinda, perhaps if you wanted to start and maybe with some of the projects that you worked with when you were at the Kota Kita Foundation. Melinda, you might be on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So yeah, basically what I did in Kota Kita Solo is the organization works on the urban participation. We believe that city making is not the realm of government. People can have voice for the future of their city. So I work a lot with communities in Solo, assisting them in making like this collective master plan, mapping together. And then I got the chance to go to Banjarmasin, which is very interesting. It's a floating city in Kalimantan, and see how the livelihood of people there and how the informal community contributes to the development of the city. So yeah, actually I missed the main question, Ben. Can you?
Yeah, the first part was, did you see a positive effect, and were you able to evaluate it or measure it or track it? So that was the second part.
Yeah, I think participation is an important tool for be it in the city making, in art. I believe Jennifer and Tintoy have more experience in that. I think people nowadays should decide. They have voice. They should decide what the future they want. We've seen across ASEAN there are a lot of activism on climate change, on women empowerment, and those things we must consistently explore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. Tintoy, over to you.
Right, okay. I mean, on the first part on the revival, I mean, when I started it, it's really at that direction. So when I start until today, it's still in the so-called same directions. There's not too much of changes. So for that part, I'm a few years back, I'm a youth. So I do this. The main target audience is youth. They are, so I know what they want, or I kind of understand what they like. So this project maybe become easier for them to accept. That could be the one of the reason. And the second part on the tracking, honestly speaking, I don't track. The reason is I have a fading art to save. After years, it become my responsibility to try to make it better. Or so I come to a point like it doesn't matter how many percentage or statistic or how people like it or not. It is hard to track that, you know. So as if I have a million people on this, but the art is still fading, so it's irrelevant. So most important is I need to know the root, the core, and I need to work on that to make sure that it is growing, you know, and that's what I do. Yeah. So sorry for the second question.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Tito. Melinda, there might be a project there for research and evaluation there for you to do with fusion wayang kulit.
Thank you, thank you.
And Jennifer, please, over to you.
With this past work with the All Visions workshop, in the beginning, I had a very clear structure for evaluation where I wanted to look at the number of hits that, the number of impressions from the AR visualizations, the number of exchanges of information between major creative technologists and students. And, I had a very kind of a little bit too concrete of an idea of what, how to evaluate people, curiosity. And, but through the course of the workshop, I let go a little bit actually, because, since doing the workshop, it became more about the experience there and not so much forcing this narrative on kids, and so then, the conversation game became more about, just seeing the kids around and conversations that I would have with them. And, one kid, we ended up talking a lot about gaming, esports and gaming. And so, that to me became the success mark, just continuing these relationships and going back to the school every once in a while to see how everyone's doing and be that resource if they want to keep going. But yeah, so that's sort of my arc of evaluation. But typically for other artworks, I don't really evaluate, because I think it's just hard to evaluate, how do you evaluate interest? I think that's around social media evaluation. They're vanity metrics anyway, to be honest. In my work as a communicator, that's kind of what I found. It's very tactical. And so I think that, if I'm creating work as an artist, I don't want to be too hampered by this idea of what the end result is. I just want it to unfold. And so, yeah, I can't say that I have any, evaluation metrics, but I do any more kind of very social impact focused projects, then I think that they are very necessary.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, so I have another question here from Romeo Aka Jr. from the Philippines. It is also directed, I think we'll start with Tintoy on this one because it's quite specific to fusion wayang kulit. But I think Melinda and Jennifer, if you want to weigh in after, I'll ask you afterwards. So Tintoy, Romeo says that he loves that fusion wayang kulit is contributing to reviving a fading art by embracing characters from mythology outside of ASEAN. But his question is, isn't there a danger of colonization as wayang kulit is an indigenous art form? Wouldn't it be better if more local superheroes were used instead of pop culture, i.e. from local comics or news stories from ASEAN? So Tintoy, I'll hand that question over to you.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, good that you asked. The thing is, for our approach, we are doing, there are many group who is doing something for this art, there are there are group who doing very traditional. We are just one of many who actually trying to do something for this art, and our approach is fusion. So the fusion usually will take something more, how to say, they're more different in terms of context and subject matter. So this way, the approach, our approach, that the result will be a bit different. I do think about saying, what if I use a local story? So if I use a local story combined with the local art, then it's only the local who will understand. So the notion of actually having something which is so-called foreign, not Asian, it actually create the kind of unexpected, or in the how do I take it, a different type of approach for people to actually get how to say, attract to, like, hey, what is this, so they might get some curiosity about the what the final result is. So basically this is our way of doing. I'm not saying what he suggests. I mean, I think it's good to say currently that our approach will be trying to actually do something which is mix or fusion.
Thank you, Tintoy. And Melinda, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think Jennifer can go with this.
Okay. Jennifer, over to you.
Yeah, I actually, this is something that I do think about a lot, being, Western educated, born and raised in LA, and working, especially with All Visions, working within a community. And, it's something that I reference a little bit in my presentation, in which I wish I spent more time with the community. And, I am always afraid of, I have a very filter for everything because that's where I grew up, and it takes practice and it takes awareness to continue to question that. And it's a practice that I'm very committed to. But it's I'm human and I make mistakes, and I think it's I don't want to let that stop me from trying anything or exploring any idea, but it is a filter that I have to be aware of at all times. And so personally, I try to, read as much as possible, read as many, Southeast Asian authors. I am trying to read more in Thai. I'm very slow still, but it's a work in progress, trying to read in the local language. And I think it is a concern, and it's something that I am, try to counteract in whatever I do. But yeah, I don't always get there, but I think that, it's okay to try.
Actually, Ben, can I add to that a little bit? So yeah,
of course,
the discussion between popularization and preservation. Actually, I had this conversation with my friend a long time ago. We were talking about the future of our house. So why we cannot get like the house like our parents had, with backyards, with huge size. So I think we always have this kind of thought that preservation is expensive. We cannot afford that. So today we are facing the reality that popularization is cheaper, like mass product is cheaper. We can only afford a small size apartment in the city center, box size, like a cage. Yeah, so I think we always have the idea that preservation is expensive. We cannot afford that. So we are in the dilemma between market and preservation. Yeah.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to just have one more. Well, we'll have one more statement from everyone. This is less a question. Now, today we actually have a lot of young people from across ASEAN, especially university students. So, and all of you have worked in some way with young people. So, again, we'll go in the same order as the presentations, but I'd just like to ask you what message, considering our topic today is about social impact, would you like to leave with the young people who are listening today? Over to you, Melinda.
Yeah, I think Jennifer has already highlighted that in her presentation. There is one important thing there. I think keep exploring, keep being resilient, no matter how hard the situation will be. I think at this moment, we should not keep ourselves inside a box. We should be open-minded. Yeah. I think that's an important message.
Tintoy?
Yeah, just like my what I wrote in my conclusion is about what I'm doing is about this art and it's fading. There are not only, I mean, shadow puppet is fading. There's so many different many traditional art are fading. So I feel that we should do something about those things. Those culture, whatever, is the identity of the country. If it's gone, then the country become more and more diluted. Then it's no different with just like nobody will know what is it. So if you try to, if those, I mean, the message to the youth, like if they could try to do something for the traditional or art, it is something meaningful, I should say.
Thank you, Tintoy. And Jennifer?
My message is, I don't know, I feel like I look at all the panelists and all the participants in this webinar today, and I'm more inspired by you. Like, I feel like, looking at the work of ASEAN Foundation and all the work that I see in different kind of self-organized networks, I think that there is so much strength in, in groups and networks. And I think that's something that people are already doing. And so, I think that, I think the only message I can think of is to remember to, reach out to, friends and neighbors, and we're all in this together. And yeah, it really truly is like a very global phenomenon. And so that makes, in a way, that makes this kind of global village even smaller. And I think that, this is the time to take advantage of those connections and make new connections as well. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our question time. Now, I'd just like to say a very special thank you to the Republic of Korea and the ASEAN Republic of Korea Cooperation Fund for supporting Connect ASEAN and the Connect ASEAN Creative Futures Dialogue. And now from our Executive Director, Dr. Yang-Mi Eng, and all of us at the ASEAN Foundation, thank you, participants, for sparing us your time today. That now concludes the question time, and I will pass the screen back to Stella.
So thank you, panelists, for your insights. Thank you, Mr. Ben, for moderating the session. And I would also like to thank all our attendees for your, on Zoom and Facebook, for your lively engagement in this webinar. If, like me, you want to watch and replay this webinar again, or maybe just the graphic recordings, do not worry, since we will upload both the full version and summary on our ASEAN Foundation social media pages. So finally, we have come to the end of the webinar. However, we still have another webinar next month, so we hope that all of you can join us again. And now for the moment that you've been waiting for, how to get your certificate. So we will be presenting a screen where you can see the survey link, which will be shared and distributed by the organizer in a live video chat. And you just have to fill it in completely. The organizers will then send you your e-certificate through email within a month. Thank you again, everyone. Stay safe and look forward to Connect ASEAN's future activities. And as we close,